Hello, this is Monsignor Mitas again talking about the Ten Commandments from St. Angela Merici Parish in Florissant. Last time we talked about the sixth and ninth commandments, how the church, when we talk about these things, we generally tend to put those two together because one is the actual deed, the other is the thought that underlies the deed. And we're kind of understanding that. We're into the whole idea of the seven deadly sins. Remember, from traditionally, they're lust, envy, covetousness, pride, it's anger, etc., etc. Each one is not a sinful act in itself per se, but rather it's a disposition towards sin. An angry person is more likely to commit a violent act. A lustful person is more likely to commit adultery. A covetous person is more likely to steal, etc., etc., etc. And so as we combine the sixth and ninth commandments together, so we also usually combine the seventh and the 10th. The seventh is, thou shalt not steal. The 10th is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, or pardon me, thy neighbor's goods. And again, we can see that the seventh deals with the act itself, the act of theft, and the 10th deals with the attitude behind it. The idea that somebody else has something that you want really bad, and you will do anything to get that. And even that act itself is a deleterious thing for the human race. Because you start thinking that way and start getting into that mode of looking at things, you're going to wind up in a very bad place, usually. Implicit in the seventh commandment is the whole idea of private property, that God is essentially recognizing that we do have a right to the things that are ours, and that nobody else can legitimately take that from us. And so any kind of cheating, any kind of direct stealing, bribery, embezzlement, there's all different kinds of names for ill-gotten goods, people receiving money or taking money that doesn't really belong to them. And that's all illegitimate. It's all a violation of the commandment of God not to steal. Along with that comes, the virtue of charity, where we're supposed to be responsible and generous. You know, if God has given you a lot, no, you don't have to, I suppose, give it away, but you may think about doing that. To recognize that God gave us these things for a reason, and not necessarily for our own aggrandizement, for us to live selfishly in this world. You know, we talk about economics and economic systems, and you've got things like socialism, which is a denial of private property, and that makes it sinful. The church has always condemned socialism. But then you also have a kind of capitalism, where it recognizes people's right to own things, but also along with it is the responsibility to use that wisely. Like property, for example. You know, if you think you own a piece of property, well, what makes you think you own that? We got a deed to it? Well, fine. But guess what? That piece of property's been here for several billion years. Will probably be here several billion years after you're gone. All you really have is custody of it for a while. And the understanding is that we're supposed to use that the way God wants us to. Jesus told many parables in the Gospels about a king or a wealthy man going away on a trip and leaving his servants in charge of his property until he gets back. We understand that these are metaphors, that these are allegories, because the landowner is God himself, and we are his servants. He's put in charge. We think it's ours. Well, it really isn't ours. We're managing somebody else's property, somebody else's estate. Does that mean the state has the right to take it from us when we're not using it properly? Well, not really, because the state is like anybody else, an entity, and it must respect our rights to private property. If the government has taxes that are too high, that is stealing. That is an unjust taxation. The government has to respect these bonds as well. But the whole idea is that each one of us is called to recognize that we don't take any of this with us when we go. No matter how much we may have accumulated, the day we die, we got nothing. We're reduced to zero. That someone like Rockefeller is no different from somebody on Skid Row in that regard. We're all reduced to absolute poverty and nothingness. And to make an account of our lives while we were alive and actually able to do something about that is a very important thing, something not to be taken lightly. Yes, we have a right to private property. Yes, everybody has to respect that right. But along with that comes a certain responsibility that we do not live in this world selfishly, but understand the virtue of charity. And I thank you for listening.